Thanks for everyone for joining us today to learn more about traveling with your CPAP and how to travel when you have sleep apnea. We've had a presenter change, so Megan Pegg was to be here, but due to illness, we are going to now hear from Susan Clark, who's also another sleep apnea nurse educator from Saskatoon City Hospital's Sleep Disorder Center. She's joined by a brand new casual sleep apnea nurse educator named Amanda. And so we welcome you both here today, and thanks for presenting for us. I'm Jamie Peters. I'm a registered nurse and certified respiratory educator here at Lungs Saskatchewan, and it's my pleasure to welcome you and be your host today and your moderator, hoping that you can live your best lung life with sleep apnea. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the land that I'm hosting this on is Treaty 6 territory, which is the ancestral traditional territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Dakota Sioux, as well as territory of the Métis. Lungs Saskatchewan affirms our commitment to the Reconciliation and Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit footsteps who have marked these lands for generations, and like you to acknowledge the space you are from at home to yourself, and I hope that you know which treaty you are on. Following the presentation, we'll have time for a moderated question and answer period. So I've got some of those questions set up already, and we will be able to ask live or in the chat as you'd like. If you'd like to watch this webinar again or any of our past webinars, you can go to lungsask.ca and look under lungs and patient education, and you'll be able to watch those there on demand. Susan, our presenter, Susan Clark, is a registered nurse with a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from the University of Manitoba. She's worked in long-term care, on surgical wards, and now in sleep medicine. Susan joined the staff at the Sleep Disorder Center in 2016. So almost a decade long. We're glad to have you. She's got a wealth of knowledge, and we are going to pass over to you now.
Thank you, Jamie. So I think we'll just go directly to the PowerPoint. So give me a moment while I share my screen. All right, is that good?
No, can't see it.
Of course not.
It worked right before.
We're good now?
There, perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Technology, hey? So Megan initially had started looking into setting up this presentation, and we started off actually looking at what are some of the questions that we get frequently from people. And the more she fleshed it out, the more we realized we get a lot of questions about traveling. So this is her presentation, and I'm happy to get the opportunity to present it. Keeping the wind in your sails, traveling with your CPAP machine. We always put in our vision, mission, values, and philosophy of care for the Saskatchewan Health region here. Personally, my beliefs are very much about patient and family-centered care being very important. So I'm happy to work with an organization that agrees with me. We also have our land acknowledgement here and recognize that the history is important to our future and our efforts to close the gap in health outcomes between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples by knowing what the land and the traditional people of the land offer us. So again, I definitely would agree with Jamie on that. I hope everybody knows where they are, which treaty their land they're on, and acknowledge that for yourselves. So just a basic outline, traveling with your CPAP machine. One of the biggest questions we get is, do I need to take my CPAP when I travel? We've got some tips for traveling, and I hope some of your travelers will share some of the tips that you've learned along the way. We get questions a lot about distilled water when you travel. Camping and outdoors and how to manage CPAP when you're doing that. We get questions about Traveling for an occupation, we're going to focus mainly on some of our long haul truck drivers who have their own challenges. We've got a little bit of information about equipment that's designed for travel. I think we've got a couple people from some of the vendors on with us today, and so maybe they'll be able to elaborate a little bit on that if anybody has specific questions on equipment, and just about looking after your equipment when you're traveling. So the short answer for do I need to take my CPAP when I travel is probably yes. For the most part, it would be recommended that you do travel with your CPAP. Just because you're traveling doesn't mean that you're not going to experience sleep apnea. Traveling with your CPAP allows you to keep treating your sleep apnea. Lots of people will have symptoms when they don't use their CPAP machine, and who wants to be tired and groggy when they're sleeping? Not only that, if you're someone who snores, you may be sharing sleeping space with your family, and if you keep them up all night, they're kind of going to be miserable to travel with. So yes, we would recommend take your CPAP. Some of the symptoms you might notice return if you're not traveling with your CPAP. You might find that you wake up with morning headaches, or you wake up frequently at night. You may wake up and feel like you have some brain fog, or just a little fuzzy, less alert. You may be sleepy in the daytime when you want to be out checking out the sights. You might be irritable, and nobody wants to travel with an irritable partner. And you might notice that you're snoring. Most of the time when you purchase a CPAP machine, or you get a CPAP machine through the sale program, it's going to come with a travel bag. Using that travel bag is quite convenient for travel. It helps to keep the equipment clean, organized, safe. Usually you can pack it all into the carrying case yourself. It's easy to carry. Some of them will even just have a strap on them that'll pop over like a carry-on luggage, over the handle on your carry-on luggage. So it just makes it kind of easy to manage. If you are traveling abroad, you're going on ships or overseas on planes, or you're in another country that has a different type of power source than we have, you do need to check into that before you travel, because you may have to also bring along some sort of adapter with you to be able to use your CPAP when you're traveling. The machines themselves shouldn't reach extreme temperatures, either cold or hot. So when you are traveling by plane, we usually recommend you take that as carry-on luggage, because if it goes into baggage, it can reach some extreme temperatures in the baggage compartment. If you're going in your car, don't leave it sitting in the window where your car is heating up really hot and damaging your equipment either. Some people will actually travel without their humidifier. So if you have an older S9 model, when you pack up just the CPAP, it's much more compact if you don't take the humidifier. With the AirSense 10, if you don't take the water chamber, and I believe the AirSense 11, you do need to get an end cap for your CPAP if you plan to travel without the humidifier. Traveling without it just helps to reduce the weight and the size. If you're somewhere where you don't have power and you're using battery packs, typically you can't use the humidifier anyway, so why take it along if you can tolerate the therapy without the humidifier? So if you're going by airplane, definitely check out the regulations, especially the rules specific to the airline you're traveling with. It is a medical device, so it shouldn't be counted as a carry-on bag. It should be counted as a medical device. So hopefully you can take that on your airline along with your carry-on bag. Some of the longer flights, if you're going overseas, you might feel like you need to use a CPAP machine while you're traveling. So again, check with your airlines of what you need to do that. If you just plug in or what, that'd be the same on a ship or train. if you're traveling for long term and are going to need to use it while traveling. Again, a note about the power adapter. Make sure you know what you need for a power source when you're flying with your machine. Usually it is safe to plug in the machines on a long commercial flight, but yeah, double check. Machines, when they're in their bag, they pretty much all look alike. So try and mark your bag in some sort of way. I know anytime my grandma used to travel overseas, she always had these big, brightly colored pom-poms you couldn't miss attached to her luggage. A visible tag. Mark it in some way so that you know that's yours. We've actually had a couple of people contact us in the past. Hey, I just got back from this trip. I got my CPAP. I opened it up and it's not mine. What do I do? So luckily, one of the CPAP machines happened to be a sale machine, and we could actually track down who should have had that machine. And we're able to contact them and kind of facilitate getting those machines back to the right people. However, if they're both privately purchased machines, definitely we wouldn't have been able to help out at all. We have no idea, unless there's a name or something. Maybe put a tag with your name and phone number in with the machine just in case, because they all do look the same when you're traveling. When we issue the machines through the sale program, usually you get a copy of the sale application form. It's a yellow form. It basically has your settings on it, that it's prescribed by a physician. It's got your serial number, make, and that. Some people travel with just even with that inside the bag of their machine, so that again, it's identifiable. It can kind of show that it was prescribed by a physician. It is a medical device. So if you have one of those types of forms, just put it in the bag and just travel with it. Distilled water is another issue that tends to pop up. I actually got a phone call from a fellow who was in Italy, who got to Italy and realized distilled water might not be as easy to find as he had thought it was going to be. Definitely, it is recommended to use distilled water in your humidifier, even when you're traveling. The reason is that the distilled water does go through a process which takes out those impurities, takes out those minerals that you find in other sources of water, especially tap water. The minerals can build up in the water chamber in that. It can deteriorate your water chamber quicker, can also increase your risk of bacteria growth. So ideally, we'd like to see distilled water. If you can't find it though, what are your options? So filtered water is an option. So you have to read the labels. It should say on the label, if it's been filtered, what parts are filtered out. As long as it's gone through some sort of filtration system that's effectively removing those impurities and the minerals, it should be reasonably safe. Basic bottled water might say distilled, they might say purified. See if you can check the labels and find one with the lowest mineral content possible. And last kind of case, tap water. Again, it's generally not recommended because there are more minerals, more impurities in tap water, and it does damage the equipment over time. You probably just have to make sure you clean your equipment a little more rigorously. You might need some vinegar water solution to really, get that calcification and that mineral buildup, get rid of it. Camping is often a subject that comes up when we're talking to people about CPAP and such. It kind of depends on your location and your accommodations. So if I'm glamping or I have a small rustic cabin that has power, shouldn't be any problem just to plug in your CPAP machine. If you're in a camper or a trailer and you have access to electrical sites, again, depending on what ampage your site is at, will depend on whether you're able to use your CPAP machine. If you're in a tent, that's a whole nother story. Distilled water, is it going to be available? Can you pack it? If you're going on a backcountry adventure, you probably aren't going to want to pack a giant jug of distilled water. It's kind of heavy to pack very far. What's the weather like? Is it cold? If you're in a cold area, you might want to preheat the humidifier before you turn it on. You might need to use a heated hose or insulate a regular hose if that's what you got to prevent that condensation in the water for building up in your hose and your mask. So 30 amp campsite, you should be kind of good to go if you're in a trailer. Backcountry camping, we get a lot of hunters and people who go into fly-in fishing camps. Sometimes they'll look into getting a portable battery of some sort to use. These will work for a short period of time. They still probably are going to need to be recharged. So we usually recommend that you talk to your vendor about your options, go to the CPAP supply companies, see what they have available, see what they recommend, because they're the ones who kind of deal with this equipment definitely more than us. Some of the batteries may need connector cables. If you're remote, you might have a backup generator. You're going to have to play it by ear and ask questions and troubleshoot to see what's going to work best for you. Truck drivers have a whole bunch of other challenges because who knows where they're parking for the night. But if they've got sleepers and they're sleeping on the truck, oftentimes they'll work with employers to get alternate power sources set up. That might be like an auxiliary power unit, power inverters. They might go to battery packs. If you're traveling, you can also consider looking into the travel size CPAPs. They draw a lot less power. So that might be an option for you. Just an additional note about those power sources. Again, if you're using an outside power source other than plugging into the wall, you need to make sure that power source is going to be compatible with your CPAP unit. And again, I do suggest you talk to your CPAP supplier and when you're considering those alternate power sources, because they've got experience in that, they'll probably have some tips for you and some suggestions. Some of the equipment designed for travel, other than the battery packs, are mini CPAPs. There are several out on the market. The most common one that we've seen here in the sleep lab is the Air Mini. So that's the one on the right side of the screen. It basically fits in the palm of your hand. There's no humidifier on it. It uses a separate system, which is actually also pictured with this little kit I have on the screen. The other machine, I believe that one was one I'd found from Philips Respironics, actually. I haven't seen one of those in use. The waterless system that the Air Minis use is called Humidex, and it's a contraption that kind of fits between the mask and the hose. And it just basically helps to recover or retain some of the moisture from your breath as you're breathing, delivering it back through the breathing circuit. I don't know how it compares. Maybe some of you have actually used it and you can let us know, how does that work for you? But that one in particular, I believe, is only compatible with the ResMed Air Mini, and I'm not sure what else is out there for some of the other mini CPAPs. It'd be something you'd have to look into. Equipment care is always important, whether you're at home, whether you're traveling, and it doesn't change whether you're somewhere else or whether you're at home. You always need to be wiping down the mask when you take it off in the morning. If you're traveling, you might want to consider using the CPAP wipes. They would probably be quicker and easier. However, you might have to pack those with you. I don't know how available they would be when you get where you're going. If you're longer than a week, you still need to clean out the water chamber, the hose, the mask and headgear at the 1 week mark. Try and get some spot where you can put some warm water in a sink, add a little bit of mild liquid soap, let it soak for up to 10 minutes and then rinse it out really well. and leave it out to dry. The water chamber, definitely don't travel with it full of water. You risk the chance of getting it into your CPAP motors and that and doing damage to your machines. Make sure it's empty. It also weighs more, so there's no point. Again, wash the water chamber once a week. Empty it daily when you wake up and replace the water if you can. That's probably the main things for when you're traveling. When you're at home, of course, filters get changed every 3 months as well. We got some of the references that Megan used putting this presentation together. Last slide Megan had here is just to make sure the view is the only thing taking your breath away.